Ever since our last Nintendo Switch 2 video back in March, there have been a ton of updates, from Nintendo themselves announcing that a successor to the Switch 2 will be unveiled in this financial year, to the entire specs being leaked. So here are 10 major Switch 2 updates. And I want to start off with the Joy-Cons. A new leak coming from China claims that the Switch 2's Joy-Cons will be larger and that they will also feature a new magnetic mounting system as opposed to the current rail attachment system. Now, I've personally never had an issue with the current rail mounting system, but having it magnetic, I'm assuming would not only be faster, but also probably more enjoyable to attach and detach. The report claims that the magnetic suction will be controlled by electromagnetic technology. This means that the attachment and detachment of the Joy-Cons might be facilitated or secured by an electric current that activates the magnets, offering a more reliable and possibly a smoother experience as well, which sounds definitely more expensive to manufacture than the current system. Another change is when it comes to the buttons. An extra button will be added to the back just about here. And I'm assuming that this will be some sort of programmable button, similar to what we've got on the DualSense Edge from Sony. And we're also to be getting a new function button on the right Joy-Con right below the home button, although it isn't very clear what the function of this button will actually be. The report also claims that the current Joy-Cons will still be supported via Bluetooth, so if you've got a bunch of them lying around, you'll still be able to use them for party games, which also tells me that those 2 extra buttons won't be required in new games. The Pro Controller will also still be supported, and these new controllers will still feature HD Rumble. Although, from the looks of it, it doesn't seem to be an improved version of HD Rumble, which I was personally hoping to see. Okay, now the second big update is the overall size. Central Leaks posted this image that shows how big the Nintendo Switch 2 really is. And when compared to the Switch OLED, it looks to be a significant size increase. However, compared to the Steam Deck, it is still noticeably smaller. The display itself looks to be about the same size, but the Joy-Cons are way more compact. And personally, I think that's a great approach. We're getting a larger display, and more about that in a minute, while the Joy-Cons only get a tiny bit bigger. And we still have a console that is far more compact than most of the other handhelds out there. Now, let's talk about that display. There have been even more leaks confirming what we've heard before, that we're going to get an 8-inch panel. That's already a significant increase from the 7-inch panel of the Switch OLED, the 7.4-inch of the Steam Deck OLED, and also larger than the 7-inch display of the ROG Ally and the MSI Claw. In fact, it is larger than most handhelds on the market, with only the Lenovo Legion that I'm aware of having a larger 8.8-inch display. But something that's quite surprising to me is that this is also now said to be a new 1080p panel, as opposed to the 720p that we've had up until now, matching the resolution of most other handhelds on the market. And in fact, it will be even higher res than the Steam Deck, which tops at 800p. This means that the Switch 2 is packing some serious performance if Nintendo is happy to bump the resolution by 125%. Also, we know that Samsung will be manufacturing this display again, just like they did with the Switch OLEDs. Like, the only downside with this display is that it is still said to be an LCD panel rather than OLED. I do hope that Nintendo also offers an OLED version for a higher price maybe, as the OLED display on the Switch OLED was just night and day compared to the standard model. And speaking of OLED displays, if you've got an OLED phone, you've got to try our Radiant Roses WallpaperZ pack. It's got these beautiful abstract rose designs on dark backgrounds, so they look gorgeous on an OLED screen. Plus, they're all in 8K, so they look amazing on your smartphone, your tablet, as well as your desktop. And you can check out Radiant Roses on our app Wallpapers for iOS and Android by using the link below. And now back to the Switch 2 leaks, we've also had some updated performance numbers. More specifically, the RAM details have been leaked. And we are set to be getting 12 gigs of RAM up from 4, so 3 times the amount of RAM that we had on the original Switch, as well as much faster memory, at 7,500 megatransfers per second as opposed to 3,200, which is more than double the speed as well. Plus, we are also getting LPDDR5 memory, possibly even 5x, as opposed to LPDDR4, meaning that the RAM inside the Switch 2 will also be more power efficient. So developers will have a ton more freedom when it comes to the Switch 2 games. But wait, it gets even better, as the storage options have also been leaked for the very first time. And we are also now set to be getting 256 gigabytes of storage, or 4 times the amount on the Switch OLED, or 8 times the amount on the original Switch. Now, if you're thinking that this means you won't need a microSD card anymore, I still think you will, as the games for the Switch 2 will take up far more storage, as they'll be running at 1080p in handheld and 4K when docked. And especially when you consider that major AAA titles are set to be coming to the Switch 2 as well, I do think that a microSD card slot is still something that you'll need to purchase. Now, aside from the storage amount, its speed has also been leaked, with UFS 3.1 speeds, which should be close to 2 gigabytes per second, whereas the current Switch's storage speed is about 400 megabytes per second. And now let's talk about the chip. For a long time now, it's been rumored that the Switch 2 would be using NVIDIA's new Tegra 239 processor. And not only have we had more reports stating the same thing now, but we also have a better idea when it comes to the overall performance that we should expect from the Switch 2. More specifically, a new report coming from Moore's Law is Dead, who also reported on the PS5 Pro specs before, claims that the Switch 2 will be significantly more powerful than previously expected, with an overall performance similar to the Xbox Series S and the PS4 Pro when docked, as opposed to the previous rumors which were saying that its performance would be closer to the PS4. And these numbers are without even taking DLSS into account, which means that with DLSS, we should see a similar level of image quality to the current gen consoles, which Central Leaks also seems to point at. Aside from this, we also have some details when it comes to the new dock. This is said to be mostly the same as the current version, with the only visual difference being the more rounded corners. Now, the Switch OLED dock already had more rounded corners compared to the original dock, so these will now be even more rounded than that. Aside from the new dock, there's also to be a new kickstand. The Switch OLED already had a significantly superior kickstand compared to the original, as it was not only much wider, but you could also adjust it to pretty much any angle that you wanted. And now this new kickstand is rumored to have a dampening bracket as well as even more adjustability. I'm not really sure how much more adjustable it could be, as the Switch OLED's one was already very good. So I can only assume that it will be able to go even lower or allow the Switch to stand up almost vertically. Which brings me to some backwards compatibility updates. The Switch 2 is said to be backwards compatible with not just digital Switch 1 games, but physical games as well. Plus, there will be a second generation cartridge, probably one supporting much faster speeds, which will not be compatible with the Switch 1. Aside from new cartridges, there is also said to be a new type of microSD cards that will be supported. More specifically, microSD Express, which have recently been announced by Samsung. These come in 256 gigabytes of storage as the minimum, and feature significantly faster speeds of up to 985 megabytes per second read, or just about 8 times faster than regular microSD cards. Which means that while these cards won't be cheap, they will allow us to run the Switch 2 games with likely similar load times compared to the Switch internal storage. And finally, we've got the release date. As Nintendo themselves mentioned that the next Switch will be launched in the current financial year, we can only assume that it will be launched before March of 2025, which is when their financial year ends. Business Korea believes that we could get it in the second half of 2024. Although personally, I think that a holiday 2024 release would make the most amount of sense, as that's when Nintendo will be able to sell the most amount of units. Of course, this will depend on games too. Assuming that Nintendo is planning on having some exclusive games for the Switch 2 at launch as well, to showcase its performance, its release date could be adjusted to align with when the games are ready. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the Switch 2. I think it could just be the ultimate handheld gaming experience, especially with AAA titles coming to it as well. But let me know, what do you guys think? And definitely feel free to continue this conversation on our ZONEofTECH Discord channel linked right below. I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.